Greetings.
Should I put a little more growl into it?
Okay, I came back to, we spent 48 hours making puppets.
Making and breaking hearts, Ellinger.
It's not that kind of podcast.
On a practical level, I have to remember what I was saying on a practical level.
We should have a safe word. Armageddon!
I guess we're maybe semi-proud of that.
Welcome to Hide and Create, your online writing workshop.
Welcome back to Hide and Create. This is Moses Siregar. I'm with Joshua Essoe, Jordan Ellinger, and Diana Rowland. Today we're going to talk about lies writers tell themselves. And this is a bit of a Rorschach episode. We're going to just see where we go with it. We don't really know. I'm going to go to Jordan first.
Okay. Well, I had a couple of big points. Maybe the first and biggest one is when I write a novel and it gets picked up by a traditional publisher, I will be able to quit my day job. So generally that doesn't happen. Tobias Buckle did a survey a little while ago on first novel advances, and I think his average for a science fiction novel, average mind you, was $5,000. And I think for a fantasy novel, edited, it was $7,000. Right? And those advances aren't paid out all at once. You don't sign a contract and get $7,000, especially in tie-ins, right? I've gone over before how advances are dispersed. Generally with tie-ins, you get a third of it for a synopsis. In fact, the most recent contract I signed, I get a third of it for a synopsis, a third of it for the first draft, and a third of it for the final draft, right? So if you think $7,000, if you get an average advance, we'll just say that, then that's like, $2,500 or something, when you sign the synopsis, and a synopsis takes a fair amount of time, $2,500 when you do a first draft. And that, so a first draft of a novel, for a fast writer, can take like 3 months. So $2,500 for that first draft, which is 3 months of your time, that's McDonald's money, right? That's not a lot of money. Nothing against people that work at McDonald's. I started my career at Dairy Queen, so there you go. So does anybody else have any points about advances and money when it comes to writers?
Well, yeah, the biggest thing is that you take your advance and you cut that in half. That's your take-home. Because the other half is agent commission and taxes. And that's what I've always gone by. The rule of thumb is your take-home is going to be half of that. And then, it's going to be spread out over a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And, I think Kevin J. Anderson, who we've brought up many times on this show, he had written 7 New York Times bestsellers before he quit his day job. Especially in the United States, you guys have medical insurance to deal with.
Right.
And that can run up, quite a lot, right? So, don't quit your day job right away. When his rule was when the amount that you make off your royalties equals what you make from your day job, then you can quit your day job. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
There's other factors to consider, too. I quit my day job because my husband was able to support me. And that's all there is to it. It wasn't that I was making enough money or anything anywhere near that. And we'll go into that more when we get into the money thing, the money episode. But, I had a very supportive husband.
Yeah, we're looking
marry well. That's the thing. Just marry well.
Next week, we're going to have a money episode, so we'll talk a lot about money then. So I think Jordan probably hit. If this was the what's that show, The Family Feud, this would probably be one of the top 5 lies that writers tell themselves. So I think
survey says, yeah.
Yeah, survey says. So Joshua, I know you've got a good list going. So let's get into some of those.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, since Jordan brought up that one, the flip side of that one is I'm never going to be able to do this professionally. Writing is not a viable career, but I think that's a big deception sung by a lot of people out there, and if you work at it, if you give it time, it will happen. It doesn't happen overnight. Unless you're who's somebody who got a writing career supposedly overnight. Brandon Sanderson, right? So they
Whoa! No! Wow! No! Brandon.
No! No! Let me finish my point.
Okay.
Supposedly, he just appeared on people's radar, all successful in writing The Wheel of Time. But what people don't understand is that he'd been writing for years before that. He had his nighttime job at a hotel, and he wrote while he was working the graveyard shift. He paid his dues, and then when people suddenly became aware of him, they assumed that, he came out of nowhere But
Charlene Harris calls herself the overnight sensation. Took 20 years to get there.
yeah.
She'd been writing literally about 20 years before her Sookie Stackhouse books hit.
I think that kind of leads into another myth. I don't want to break in, but my first novel will sell, I guess, is a good myth.
Yeah.
Like Brandon Sanderson, because we were talking about him specifically, I think his 11th novel sold, right? Like he was writing his 11th novel and his 8th novel sold or something like that. It was
Something
a large
like
number.
that.
Again, there was another survey that went around that asked writers which of their novels sold, and it was an average of 6 novels they'd written 6 novels before the first one sold. So, sorry,
Yeah,
go back.
yeah. I mean, I haven't pitched my novel that very hard to publishers. I've pitched it to 2 or 3 and a few agents. I mean, it hasn't sold yet, but I mean, I've sold about 9,000 copies of that on my own, and it hasn't sold to a publisher. So
That's great.
Have you been actively pursuing that though, or?
not a lot. I sent it to 3 publishers. I've heard back from one of them, and I've sent it to I think maybe 4 agents with about that many rejections. So, but anyway, kind of on the indie side, just goes to show that you can write a book, you can sell it, you can make money at it, even if you're not pursuing the traditional publishing route. And that's another thing we'll probably get into with the money episode too. But back to you, Joshua.
Okay. I think another top lie that writers tell themselves is, I don't have time. Right? Everybody says, I don't have the time. They want to write the great American novel, but they would if only. So, and I think everybody is afforded the same 24 hours that, Brandon Sanderson or Stephen King are allowed. I mean, they don't have some sort of magical stopwatch that allows them to operate on some sort of secret, creepy writer time. They have the same amount of time as everybody else. If they can do it, then you can do it.
It's daunting. And what I tell people when someone's like, oh, I wish I had the time, I say, write 1 page a day. 1 page a day, and at the end of the year, you'll have a book. And that kind of puts it in perspective for them. It's very daunting to think, oh, write a novel. It's like, no, you're not writing a novel. You're writing 1 page. Just write 1 page.
When somebody tells me they don't have time to write, what I hear is writing is not a priority, right? Because I mean, everybody has time, like you just give up TV and or negotiate with their spouse for more time, or unfortunately give up going to the gym, whatever it is. If you make it a priority, you will find the time.
Nice.
I think another huge one, still top 5, maybe number 1, is I suck.
Well, we do.
We all just suck so badly. And I think that's the darkest lie that we tell ourselves, because that erodes our confidence as well.
But it's a natural progression. Every single book, I go through a phase where I'm just go into this deep spiral, and it's like, this book is horrible. It's going to be the end of my career. All my sales would drop off. No one's going to buy it. And this last book, I was venting to my sister, said, I can't get this book to work. It just sucks. And she said, you say this with every single book. I was like, oh, really? She said, yeah, every single book. And my husband was there. He said, yeah, you do every single book, and then you come out of it. So, it's one of those things. I guess it's a phase that I go through with every single book.
For me, it was a variation on that was, I'm not as good as Stephen King, therefore I shouldn't write books. Right? So because I'm a great admirer of most of Stephen King's work, or at least the ones that I've read, and I've read his best. The thing is, you don't really need to be as good as Stephen King, because first of all, some people don't like him. You have a unique voice. You have something that you can bring to writing. Secondly, even if you write the same kind of stuff that Stephen King likes to write, the guy's just one person. He can only write so many books. Readers have read them all, and they're looking for somebody else, some new voice, right? And thirdly, Stephen King is not an immortal. So eventually he's going to pass on. Somebody's going to need to fill his shoes.
I don't know. Are you sure about that? He did get hit by a truck.
Yeah, he did put himself into his own Gunslinger series as well, as an immortal in that. But regardless, he's just not going to write forever. You don't have to be Stephen King on your first book. Stephen King wasn't Stephen King on his first book, right? It was darn good, but it wasn't, what he is now, right? It's
just
not
write
his
the book,
best.
yeah. Right.
Just get it out there. You'll get better as you go along. When you've written as many books as Stephen King is, hopefully you'll be as good as Stephen King.
Yeah, you don't become a writer, and you don't get better as a writer by sitting around being a sad sack.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite myths, actually, speaking of working hard, is writers that think that they don't need to edit. Right. Editors will do the editing for me. I guess this is right up your alley, Joshua.
Yeah.
Do you have clients that are like that, or?
Yes, I do. I think more clients like that when I had first started. But now I've got a lot of repeats. I've got a stable of clients who come back to me, and I have, I think, educated them more about what kind of manuscript is good to turn into an editor, not just to me, but to any editor. Keep practicing, polish it, get it in as good a shape as you can before you send it to your editor. That sounds like double duty. It sounds like, why should I make it more polished if that's what I'm hiring the editor to do in the first place? Well, first of all, an editor will spend a lot less time, be able to focus on a lot more important things if things like your punctuation is already correct, if you don't have that many typos, if you don't repeat the words turning toward through the entire manuscript. But yeah, I don't need an editor is probably my favorite. Somebody's work is never, ever perfect. You're always going to need to have somebody there to come in later and burn all the warts off, right? Somebody who will be able to dig a little bit deeper and help you realize some secrets in your novel, in your plot, in your characters that were still buried that you hadn't seen yet. That takes it to another level.
And ideally, you'll have more than one person doing this. I mean, the idea thing is to have a few good beta readers and have them help you get it polished up before it hits your editor, and then your editor they can really delve into what the issues are without having to wade through all the muck.
Yeah, you need somebody there to tell you, this works, this doesn't work, have you thought of this?
Right, take care of the issues before it gets there.
Yeah, and those people's words aren't like Bible. You don't have to take everything that they say, but it's necessary anyways.
And that's another good writer myth, is that I need to listen to my editor.
Shut up, Jordan.
I mean, it's good to listen to your editor, for sure, right? But realize that, without sounding arrogant, as a writer, you're getting paid to write a lot of words, right? And often you're getting paid more than the publishing house is paying the editor. And there's a reason for that, right? You do have your own special voice and your own talent, and you are the arbiter of your own craft, right? An editor is an informed second opinion, right? They are an intelligent first reader, but they're not the final word on what your writing should be like. It's
a delicate balance. I mean, you want to listen to your editor and logically assess what they have to say, because they do know what they're talking about. If it's something you don't agree with, put up the argument. Say, I don't like that it would go in this direction because of this. And a good editor will say, okay, run with that and see if you can pull it off. That sort of thing.
Yeah. So how much of the editing critiques and comments do each of you take when you get your manuscript back full of red ink?
I mean, I consider every single thing, but then I reject anything I don't agree with. It's just as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say it's a high proportion or a low proportion?
Oh, that's hard for me to answer. I mean, it's hard for me to answer. maybe half. I don't know.
With tie-in writing, it's a little bit different, right? Because the editors are your clients. So occasionally, I have tried to argue and say, no, this doesn't make any sense, or this would be better. So I'll present points back why I think it would be better. Mm-hmm. But often I just get overruled because, of whatever reason, or I try to accommodate them as much as possible because they are my clients. They're going to be hiring me for the next work.
As far as I go, I have a few beta readers who I really, really trust, and I think they have a really good insight into my writing and my books. So I pay attention to them. I don't always agree with them. They may say something about a certain commentary that they don't like, but I'll pay attention to it and stop and consider what they all have to say. Generally speaking, my stuff is really polished before it goes to my editor. That's just because I know she's very busy, and I don't want to have her waste her time on the rough stuff and not get to the more intensive stuff in my book.
Right.
And and so when she does come up with something, I listen. I listen hard because she really knows what she's doing. I have a lot of respect for her. I don't think there's ever been anything that she's come up with that I have not agreed with, and said, "Wow, that's right. That works."
So 100%.
You're lucky. You got a good relationship with your editor, and you've got a good editor, so you're lucky in that way too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So are you saying that 100% of the things that she suggests, you're like, yeah, way to go?
I don't know if it's like, I'm going to say a blanket 100%, but I'd say the large majority. But then again, she doesn't say a whole lot because I do turn my stuff in very polished.
If you do say so yourself.
Well, okay. I kind of freaked me out the first time. Okay, now my first editor, Ann Grohl, my very first book, I got 9-page single-spaced edit letter. And, of course, I cried and everything like those. Oh, my God. And it went through several rounds. We finally got it into shape. Second book, 13 pages single-spaced. So I'm coming from Ann Grohl, who's a wonderful editor, and I'm so glad she was my first editor because she taught me a lot. I go to Betsy Wollheim, and Betsy's just a slightly different style. She's a very good editor. But my first book with her, because it was my first book with her, I polished the hell out of it. I put that through beta readers and rewrites and rewrites and rewrites. So I turned it into her, and her edit notes came back and said, you need to describe her a bit more in the beginning. Oh, and she ate the same half of a cheeseburger twice near the end. And I'm like, oh, God. I was terrified. Then on the next book, she gave me like an actual edit letter. But it was a little daunting. So.
That's awesome. I'm going to hit a few points before I throw this back to probably Jordan. So I had 4 main things that I wanted to hit on here. The first one was that the audience doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is I can write whatever I want to write and, put it out there and yay. Because, and I always think of this guy. There was an indie author that I read on kindleboards.com. He was telling a story about how he used to write the books that he liked to read, and I think it was fantasy, some kind of fantasy. And he didn't do all that well. He didn't do very well. He wasn't paying the bills or anything like that. Then he started writing the books that his wife likes to read. And then he really started paying the bills because he was really thinking about what there is an audience for. And not that there isn't an audience for fantasy or epic fantasy or whatever you're doing, there is, but romance is going to be a bigger market, for example, and more something that has a more romantic angle in many genres is a big thing. So, you do have to really think about the audience, think about how big it can be, think about whether or not you're writing for the audience. Like I write epic fantasy. If I want to be successful as an epic fantasy author, I need to be writing in series, right? And I need to write them quickly. I need to write a lot of them. And then develop your own sort of following, and you may not sell like the romance authors sell, but you can put out books and have your steady audience and make your money. So, audience matters.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to make any money at it.
True.
So,
true.
If you don't care about your audience, then don't expect to make money.
People have asked me how I can write tie-ins, which aren't necessarily my ideas. Sometimes people send me outlines and they're like, write this, and it's just a dungeon crawler and it doesn't really have a lot of challenge in it. But you can find joy in making the best damn dungeon crawler around, right? You can inject your own voice into it and make it unique to you and own dungeon crawlers, right? I think that it's the same with writing for a particular audience, right? If you write for romance readers, then own romance, right? Find your joy and fulfillment in writing the best romance novel that you can write and inject your own voice into it.
So the next one I want to hit on is that the rejection from person X matters. The rejection of any one person matters because it's so easy to get your emotions invested in, oh, I want this person to like my work, or I want this person to read my work, or I want this reviewer to say something nice about my work, or any number of people. It's so easy as a writer to get hung up on, the one person who, doesn't seem to like what you're doing or doesn't give you the response that you're looking for. And I think that's part of the thick skin you have to develop as a writer is you have to not have those expectations. You have to not be attached to what certain people are going to do or certain people are going to say, and you got to just keep your train running downhill because you're going to hit rejection all over the place on every level, from friends to editors to reviewers to anything you want to name. And, just got to not have expectations for what anyone is going to say. I think that's one thing I think I've learned so far. I guess I'm still learning it, but I think that one's an important one.
Yeah.
So another one I want to say was that I can make a living at this without a Herculean effort. Back to money.
Easy.
Back to money. Yes, you can lie and tell yourself you can't make money at this. You can lie and tell yourself you can make money at this. But it takes a Herculean effort. It takes serious commitment, serious time, serious focus. You have to go all out. I doubt there's any writer out there who's done really well just kind of half-assing it all the time, right? And I think that's one thing to be really honest with yourself about when you get into this. Is if you really want to do this, you really want to make a living at it, you're gonna have to role play Hercules, and you're gonna have to go for it.
Yeah, writing. That was one of the ones that I had as well. Writing should the viewpoint that writing should be either easy or it should be total misery, and. I don't think that it's either one or the other. Sometimes you'll have days when it's going to be really super easy, and sometimes you're going to have days when it's really horrible. But you keep writing anyway because that's the only way that the story gets written.
Yeah, I think that the other thing is you need to realize is that as a writer, you can do more than just write. You have to do more than just write. Speaking of a Herculean effort, you can't just sit back, type out great prose and just be done with it. You have to submit. You have to, you have to publicize yourself. You have to do bookkeeping on those advances and taxes and stuff, right?
And you have to know what the market is. You have to know the industry, and you have to go out and live life too.
And network, get those experiences and stuff.
Yeah. And it takes time too. And you can have that Herculean effort. I mean, I feel like I've put in a Herculean effort for a few years now. Yeah. Going on 4 years actually, and I'm still waiting to be that overnight success in 6 or 7 years or something like that. So, but taking steady steps. So, the last one I want to hit on, then I can let you guys talk some more, is a two-sided coin, as not to be confused with the three-sided coin, but it's got two sides to it. The one, and you probably tell yourself a lie on either side of this coin. The one side says my work has to be perfect. The other side says good is good enough. And probably only one of these applies to you. One of them is not going to apply to you. I'm on the my work has to be perfect side of the coin, I think. Probably that's been one of my sort of flaws as a writer so far, is that, I really want the book to be as good as I can make it. And that's great in terms of, like, I have a lot of satisfaction because I really like the book that I wrote. I'll always be proud of it. Luckily it has been received well. It's won an award and things like this. But especially when you get into, earning a living as a writer, if you have that perfectionistic side, unless you're Patrick Rothfuss or someone like him, which is very rare, you gotta also loosen up a little bit and keep moving, and then write the next book. And then the other side of this is if you're not that person, maybe you tell yourself, oh, that's good enough. Good is good enough. Which is great advice for the perfectionist. If you're the perfectionist, tell yourself good is good enough, because good to you is probably really quite good. Some people, good is good enough is good advice, and some people it's really bad advice. It depends on your psychology. And and then there's the question of, where do you want to, what is your goal? What is your goal? If your goal is to make money and make a living, then you really can't be too much of a perfectionist. If your goal is more, the art, the creativity, the spirituality of creating the book, then knock yourself out. Do what you do and be happy about it. But look at which side of the coin there that you're probably need to be looking at, and tell yourself that.
Yeah, for your second point, I have in my notes, my writing isn't as crappy as some other writing, right? But that doesn't mean that your writing isn't crappy enough that it doesn't need improvement. Just because that other crappy author did some crappy work doesn't mean that you have to write some crappy work too. Are you aiming for like a D+? Aim high and be awesome.
It's funny. Just that analogy is a very good one, Moses. But it's funny because I start on the, it's just tie-in writing, so good is good enough, right? If I write just average, that's going to be better than 80% of the tie-in work that's out there, right? But then I move to, when I look at it and it's done, and I've thought, oh, good is good enough, then I think, well, it has to be perfect. This could be a lot better, But there comes a point when you need to send it out the door. Right? Like I have a friend that has reworked the same manuscript for like 6 months. No, it's got to go out, right? It's over workshopped. It's over reviewed. It's got to go out, right?
Yeah, where's
Nice.
that balance?
I have a few. My biggest one, when writers say, if I don't write every day, then I'm not a real writer. I hate that write every day thing because it doesn't apply to everybody. Not everyone has to write every day. The other corollary to that is the ones who are, if I can go a week without writing, then I'm not a real writer, because you have these people like, I have to write. It's in my soul to write. Confession here, I don't write every day. I sometimes go a week or two without writing anything, especially after I've turned a book in. I know, right? But
That's
you know
it. You're
what?
off the podcast. You're not a real writer.
But it works for me, and I don't go completely bug nut, and my family actually likes me the more because I can spend time with them and stuff like that. But if that's not how you operate, you don't have to write every day. You just do what works for you. If you can do like a 4,000 word stretch in one day and take a day off and then pick it up and do some more, that's great. I go through phases. Right after I turn a book in, I do take some time off, and I really don't do a whole lot of writing. When I get into the writing the draft, I'll pull 5 days a week, and then when I get into near the end of the deadline, I pull 7 days a week, 14-hour days, and that's what works for me. Of course, my biggest lie that I tell myself is, it's okay, I can take more than 2 weeks off. I can take 4 weeks off, and I can totally write this book in 3 months. I've only been trapped by that one once, and that one really hurt when I told myself the truth. That didn't work. The other lie I tell myself is, I'll reply to my email tomorrow. No, really. I'll flag it, and that works. So I have this whole huge folder of flagged things that I really need to respond to.
And then there's the lie on the opposite side of that. It's okay that I didn't write today. I'll do it tomorrow.
Oh, yeah,
Because I've
you
spent the
gotta
day.
put it in there at some point.
Yeah, because I've spent the day answering my emails and surfing Facebook and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Eventually, you do have to write. So.
Right, because, tomorrow you could be dead.
Yeah, well, and that brings me to kind of a point, another myth, I guess, is that I need to publicize myself. I need to write for exposure. I guess just the myth of exposure in general. I see, and I've harped on this over and over again, I see too many beginning writers spending a huge amount of time keeping up writing blogs, or spending a huge amount of time on Facebook or Twitter or any number of things.
But Jordan, I need to build my brand.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing. You do need to build a brand, but what you realize is that, like, brands, real brands like Coca-Cola, they sell things. They have things to sell, right? It's not just a brand that has nothing to sell. And if you're a beginning writer and you don't have any products that you're making royalties off, right, or that are getting sold and you're making all of the profit, or however you do your finances, if you don't have anything, there's no point in building a brand. Right?
God, that's epic. I mean, and yeah, we need to have that on a bumper sticker. Worry about selling the thing and then worry about your brand.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, I like, the Jordan Ellinger brand, right? I work really hard on my career, and I work really hard on networking and getting my name out there, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have products to sell, and even I don't spend a lot of time on a writing blog, right? Because those are words that you're not getting paid for, and there are already people that are doing it with a wider audience. You're jumping into a crowded marketplace and shouting out, "Me too!" You have to compete with Tobias Buckell and Jay Lake and John Scalzi and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, who also do writing blogs, right? And it's really difficult to kind of steal market share, I guess, away from those guys. Much better to do it with something that pays you actively, like a novel or something.
So we've gone on for a good while here. Does anyone want to wrap up? Maybe we'll go have final comments with everyone. So let's go back to you, Joshua.
Okay, I have a tie. There are two that I wanted to talk about. One is writer's block. And the other one is, my characters are in control. I think I'll say just a quick note on writer's block. Writer's block is not a real thing. You can be a writer and you can be blocked, but that's not necessarily have to do with the creative process. Don't give it a special name. It's not like you have writer's block, so I guess I just won't pay the mortgage this month. That's an excuse and a privilege that a professional writer can't afford themselves. Now, characters in control. Stop that.
Thank you. God, I hate that.
I mean, the characters are you. You are in control. This is just kind of another version of I can't write unless I have my muse.
The characters in control thing drives me crazy because it's like, no, it's okay to be writing along and have an idea and have something develop and go, oh, that's really cool. That's not the characters being in control. That's you coming up with an idea.
Yeah. And, once you've ceded control, once you've ceded your brain to the creative control of imaginary entities, I think that it's time for maybe some Prozac or something. Everything that is happening is real. Maybe you write magic, but your characters are not magic. You control them. They're your little puppets. It's your show.
This is going to sound obnoxious, but I've never heard that my characters in control thing from a successful author. It's always usually someone who's trying to break in or up and who is not really sold yet, and every time I hear it, I'm like, okay, yeah, get control and then come and talk to me.
So, Diana, any final thoughts?
I think the other lies that writers sometimes tell themselves is, yes, I've set aside enough for my taxes.
Oh, interesting.
I assume it's possible to set up something like an LLC, S corporation, for self-employed taxes and things like that. But that may be something people want to look into and see if you're in the U.S. how that works.
I've done that, but I'm in Canada.
Okay.
I just file self-employed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have another business where I've been doing the LLC filing as an S corporation for a while, and it's something to look into. So, Jordan, final thoughts?
There is no such thing as a secret decoder ring. Granted, they do give you one at the end of Clarion West. But it's not real. There's no such thing as a secret handshake. Editors aren't conspiring with certain writers or against you. Everybody just gets by as a writer by polishing their craft, getting it better and better and better. You aren't an objective critic of your own work. If you're getting rejected from everywhere, it's not because there's a conspiracy against you or even against new authors. It's because you need to continue polishing your craft.
Wait. What? Oh, no.
Nice. Well, I think that's another wrap, and we will be back next week with an episode about money. We're going to talk honestly about finances. Thanks for listening.
This has been another episode of Hide and Create. The show is produced by me, Jordan Ellinger. The site is edited by Joshua Essoe, and your co-hosts have been Diana Rowland and Moses Siregar. That music that you're listening to was written by Jason Donnelly. We can be reached at writingpodcastonline.com, where you can ask us questions and suggest topics for future shows. Thank you for listening. Now go hide and create something.